Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. I wanted to do a scene featuring this Pegasus stamp and this Rider. It's by Rubber Stamp Avenue. I don't know if they're still around or not. I haven't looked. That's what that image looks like. And I wanted to use it with my Ray type of applications of pigment ink on here. It's stamped above the Seaside Cove, a few clouds around it, Crepuscular rays, and extending the rays out like that made for, I think, a pretty effective use of that pigment ink application, in that we were able to extend the rays of this stamp design out towards the edge of the card. I have it coming in front of the figure and in back of the figure right there, so it's kind of like enveloped in all of this natural light. And then these little solar flares, or these little light pixies, as you would. I have them, some of them coming from in distance and behind the figure and also in front of the figure. So it envelops the figure in yet more lighting, kind of in these little different textures right here. So a fairly simple composition and a simple color scheme. There's really minimal masking on here. If you watch this video, you'll see how it's done. But I really like the techniques here in terms of the pigment ink applications and these kind of more three-dimensional looking light beams in here. It makes for a nice dramatic scene, especially with this type of imagery. This is the way that my original concept for Nature Designs was. It was to provide kind of a setting or background for any other company's designs out there. In this case, it's this Pegasus right here and Rider. But if this whole space was open in here, this could easily be the space for some sort of word stamp, okay? There's a lot of word stamps out there, and I think this setting would be perfect for a lot of different word stamps. You may change the color scheme around a little bit, depending on the content of a word stamp, I guess it could say happy birthday or something like that, but I don't know. This type of imagery right here with the light coming from above, I don't know. We can do all kinds of things with that type of setting. So in this scene right here, I thought it looked great with that kind of type of figure. And oh, so much fun kind of playing around with these beams, putting it in front of things as well as behind things, and enveloping things in light. Okay, so anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and happy stamping to everyone. Okay, I'm going to see if I can't do a fairly quick scene here using the Crepuscular Rays stamp. I haven't used this one in a while, but I want to do something with the kind of the light beam effects. This is an old stamp of mine from a company called Rubber Stamp Avenue, and it says 1997, so I don't know when I bought it, I don't know where I bought it, but it's one of those old engravings, and those are some of my favorite types of stamps because the all of that really tight detail in here. Okay, these were the types of things they used to do illustrations back in the day, when everything had to be kind of line art and be able to be printable in single colors. Okay, alright, now my composition that I'm thinking of, see this, how strong this is in terms of the lighting coming from that direction right there. I'm going to put this one down. I'm just working on a quarter-page sheet of paper, and I'll have the this figure in here in its entirety, and then we'll put the Crepuscular rays somewhere up here. I might go this way, and just have those beams kind of, shining down on the imagery. And I thought, for kicks, I would put the this figure in, what is it, Pegasus, on the Seaside Cove stamp to give it some kind of dramatic surface to kind of be posed on. Okay, now I'm going to keep this simple because I want this to go reasonably fast. I'm kind of anxious to see what I can do with the Colorbox ink on there, or the pigment inks, not Colorbox specifically, but I'm so used to saying Colorbox Frost White, but I have recently purchased a couple different types of pigment inks. Okay, and we'll get to that when we get to that step in the process. Piece of hair. Okay, so we have our Seaside Cove right here. I kind of wiped off, one of the things you might have seen me do is I kind of wiped off this edge right here just because I knew I'd be positioning that horse in here. So I wiped that off a little bit. It's lighter to begin with anyway in this area on the stamp. You know, you can see that kind of open area. But I just wanted to dry it off just to give it a slightly lighter print. This is tack and peel, by the way. You can see how tacky that is for my temporary mounting system. This is a full sheet of tack and peel too, and that fits this stamp really nicely. Okay, let's stamp out this horse. I'm trying to think of the angle. That would be kind of, as they see it right side up. I'm going to angle it a little bit more like so. Maybe something like that. There's a lot of stamps in my private collection, you know, stamps from other companies that, I don't know, I'm playing around with a lot of new techniques. I'm kind of anxious to see what I can do with some of these other stamps, you know, out of my collection. I don't know, some of these effects can really lend themselves to some really dramatic effects or visuals, and I don't know, it's almost like I need to go through all of my different compositions that I've done things in, but add these new touches to it and, you know, see what those look like. It's always kind of fun when you come up with something new that you want to kind of incorporate into your, I don't know, whatever existing compositions or something like that. I'm not into really doing the same thing, not out of principle, but I just get bored, you know, and I feel like trying something new, but, you know, as far as compositions go, I don't know, it's kind of opened the floodgates, you know, with some of the new effects that I've been doing on this channel. Alright, let's see here. I'm trying to think of which way I want to do this. Okay, I'm just looking at this stamp, at this design. That would be okay too, all those beams. There's these beams like here. It's kind of more about right around in here. I don't have to have this Crepuscular ray stamp. It could just be the cloud Cumulus or something like that. Now let's do something like this. Alright. I am just going to stamp. I could stamp this in blue or something like that. I typically like doing kind of the more delicate sky figures in a color that's fairly dark because I'm going to be running in a lot of tone into it. Now, I'm going to blot off some of this down here just to make the transition of this, you know, rectangular shape here a little bit more, or a lot more, kind of a smooth by wiping off a lot of it down here, okay? Alright, let's just go like that. Some of it is going to get into my figure, but it's not so dark. It's not like I'm stamping a big solid image or a bunch of outlines into my imagery down there, so it should be okay, you know? So like I said, some of those little dots go into my figure, okay? But it's like dots into dots. It's not like hard outlines or something like that anywhere. So I don't feel the need to do a lot of careful masking or to cut out that mask and cut out that little arm there, you know, and nothing like that, okay? It's not needed. Alright, let's see. Let's add in some additional clouds around that for dramatic effect, maybe. I'll just do this again in black ink. Alright, now, I do have to watch out a little bit, like right around here, because that, horses behind, hind areas like that, it's very light. All right, same thing in the ocean down here, but that ocean stamp, with that straight line is going to be the easiest mask you've ever done. Okay, I'm just going to fold this up. I'm going to undermask slightly and have some of it showing, just so that when I stamp this cloud out, I don't want a big gap of white in between. Even though this paper is very thin, it is still a little bit of a ledge. Okay, so I'll move it up. Well, it's probably about 1/8 of an inch down here of that Seaside Cove showing. We still have this little area right here. All right, now here's the clouds. We have it top lit right here where those billows are, okay? So it looks like light is coming from above. I'm going to take this area right here and really dab that ink off, okay? So we see it right here. I'm going to wipe a lot of it off. I'm taking a good portion of it off too, okay? Remember I said about kind of wiping off the edges? Now I'm doing this one, I'm probably wiping off a lot more than I usually do, but just because this is so dark. Okay, I'm stamping it in black, and I am stamping it right next to something that's very light. Alright, here's my mask for the horse. Okay, it's going to be something like that, and I'll slightly undermask it as well. Okay. I've wiped off a lot of this portion, so should be okay. I don't know, I'm hoping. And there we have it, okay? See? No problem. And let's do another one out here, but we need to re-ink this, otherwise it'll come out too light. In this area right here where it didn't stamp out, if I stamped it out again there'd be this, see that? You can see it right there. There's like this little area of too much ink right there. That's where I stamped it out over here. So if I went for a double impression like that, that would be really distinct and there'd be a line running through this cloud. So just re-ink, okay? Take your dry paper towel, remember to blot off like that. Blotting off a good, 1 inch into it, and then really taking off the ink up here in this area, okay? And what we're doing is we're kind of doing a wet to dry type of impression, okay? And therefore it's dark to light, like that, okay? Alright, do I need to mask off this horse? Maybe. Not too much, okay? Like right around that stomach area, probably, like that. Undermask, you can see the horse right there. We can see the Seaside Cove right down there. And just go for your impression, like so. And then that's your easy masking, okay? I didn't get it perfect or anything like that. It's because that cloud is going up into that horse a little bit, but again, see these dots right here? They're dots into dots. So that looks fine. The cloud isn't an outline where you see a bunch of lines running through things. So I don't need to worry about any of that, okay? Let's do some more clouds right up here. Let's build them up a little bit. And what that's doing is it's kind of filling in my area and giving it, some additional texture and whatnot, but it's also filling in the composition, making it easier and faster for me to tone in. And I want this scene to be, reasonably fast. Right here, okay? Something like that. See where I've wiped it off out here? It stamps lighter, so it looks like it's going from dark to light, okay? And I think it, it looks somewhat dramatic, and kind of lends itself to the visuals. I find that the image itself is very dramatic. Okay, going like this. The clouds are facing the light source. Therefore, when I'm down here, it's this way. But when I'm going around this way, it starts moving up like that. And the clouds are always facing, the tops of the clouds are always facing the light source. Okay. Go about like so. There we have it. Okay. Fairly dramatic. And we haven't done any kind of toning at all in, okay? So looking forward to adding that tone into the scene. Maybe some color. Let's decide that later. Let's add some tone first, okay? Let's keep this composition fairly simple, okay? And that's just staying with our grayscale. Let's go for some Memento London Fog, okay? Let's see. Testing out my stylus tools. My stylus tools are... I thought I'd clean these all out, but I've been stamping a lot lately. This one looks clean right here. It's stained, but it's clean. Alright, let's just use gray. Alright, here we have it. I'm going to want to add some pigment ink in here to continue those rays from the image out this way, okay? Some might be in front of the image, some might be in back of it. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But, that being said, this area in general will probably be a little bit lighter. I mean darker. Lighter. Sorry, my light source right up here. And these areas down here will get a little bit darker, but it'll be oscillated, okay? We have our lake area, or seaside area. We'll have some darks and lights in it. You can see where it's already light in here. So it's just going to be darker out here, okay? And we'll add some tone around these clouds out here, keeping it light in here. But I am going to want to put a little bit of ink in here because I want that pigment ink when I add those, extend those rays out with some pigment ink. I want them to show. And if all I have is the white of the paper, those rays aren't going to show whatsoever. Okay. But here's what I'm going to do here. Okay, we're going to oscillate it. In each given space, sky, figure, and water, there's going to be some areas of light and dark. Now just in general, this is a small card, so I'm just going to keep, just in general, as far as the color scheme idea goes, it'll be kind of darker on the perimeters and lighter in the middle, okay? If you want those clouds to remain kind of representing light hitting them, okay? We're not going to tone them all out, okay? I'll leave kind of the edge of the clouds facing the light source a little bit lighter, okay, than the surrounding area. Okay, so hit that, hit that. See, the darker I take it out here, alright, the more it looks like that light is hitting them, okay? Alright, this is just this is one of those things about the monochromatics, color schemes that is that, just kind of working in gray and black, I mean, your scenes can really come up around fairly quicker than, of course, doing a scene with, I don't know, a dozen different colors or something like that in different color schemes. Not that I don't like doing that, I do it all the time, but I'm just talking about sometimes this is fun too. Going for something kind of quick. Alright, so I've just put some tone onto the horse, but I've left some areas light, like it's capturing light as well. So I treat the horse just like I treat the clouds in this area down here. Some tone on some areas, left by itself on other areas, okay? Now I'm just kind of following suit. I just see that, there's some areas on the image, on the design, that are just darker, so I'm just going in here and reiterating that darkness with some additional tone. Alright, Seaside Cove down here. It's darker in some areas, lighter in others, generally. I keep the lightest areas just as is, and I darken the areas that are inherently darker in the design. I just use that as a kind of a foundation for my color scheme as far as where I'm putting my tone. Okay, see that right there? It's capturing some of that light. Okay. Right, it's kind of like this. What I'm doing is I'm doing a real narrow strip of tone like that. And in the design, where it's darker, again, I'm coming up into these areas like that, okay? Trying to retain those areas of light that that darker tone defines. Okay. This all being said, on a small card like this, in kind of general, you know, in a very simplistic kind of breakdown, it's usually darker on the outside, lighter in the middle, okay? I mean, there's, you know, little things I'm doing, little tweaks here and there. Not secrets or something, I'm trying to explain everything in detail what I'm doing, but just in general, you can see it kind of getting darker on this outside edge right here in the sky, and it's somewhat lighter in the middle. In this case, we have some rays, so I'm kind of doing these streaks up like that, breaking up that one area of light into kind of these ray formations. Figure is kind of darker on the outside, lighter on that one side, and right in here, darker on the outside, lighter in the middle. And that's because when I ink this up, I start on the outside and I tone my way in like this. You can see it right here, what's happening. It's darker and lighter. Okay, now there are some things that, you know, these tips right here, the stylus tool tips, just aren't really great at, and that's getting in some of the finest detailed areas. But that being said, I'll just use some pens when I get to it. Alright, we're going to black. Now this black here has been re-inked, so it's really quite juicy. But we're going to keep this on a kind of a grayscale tonal scheme, okay? Kind of keeping it in the darker areas, or on the, in this case it's on the edges of the card, of the scene. Okay. Utilizing the drier version of this, okay, so I'm not getting like harsh lines everywhere, okay? If I do it like in this tone right here, very lightly, then I will avoid that type of mark, okay? And I really condense my little taps down here. Okay, this is where I start to kind of go in and add some streaks into my water, kind of like this. I have this on its edge, okay? See that? How I can get that kind of tapered edge going from outside to inside? And it kind of looks more, it's a little bit more streaky, kind of like, you know, water would look. Darken in my bottom two corners to kind of create a somewhat of a kind of a vignette in my scene. Doing my little streaks again. Not doing, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing streaks like that, then I'm coming up like that. I'm not going like this and toning the whole thing in. You could, but I want it a little bit streakier, a little bit more varied, okay? That. You don't need to keep re-inking, okay? Unless your pad is really dry. But keep using kind of the grayer, drier version of it, and it's almost like you're kind of dry brushing in your tones, okay? And when you apply very little ink at any given time, it means you'll have a lot of control over it. Okay, kind of creating a little bit of a separation between land and sky. In this case it's sea and sky. I guess I should say surface and sky, okay? and deepening my shadows in some of these areas like that. How about putting a little bit more tone onto the horse, Pegasus or whatever, the Pegasus. That, you can see its stomach is really dark in the shadows, so I just kind of add a little bit more like that. Strengthen the light coming from above. Let's see if I can get a little bit of tone in here on the figure, just to vary it a touch. Going back on the horse's hindquarters. Very, very dry brushing, dry sponging, I guess, would be more technically correct. Okay. A little bit more around my clouds here. Okay. Fairly dramatic, I think. I could tint this. I'm trying to decide if I want to add a little tint of some color into the scene. I'm not quite sure yet. Okay. That's a pretty good full grayscale application of color, I would think. Alright, let's see. Do I want to add some sort of tone into this scene? I'm not quite sure yet. I always use blues, so I don't know if I'd want to do that. Green? Maybe, but I tell you what, a color that won't be a huge kind of a commitment to a given hue would be something kind of light, okay? And I'm thinking warm, alright? Let's think of some distress inks. I think those would be a good choice right here. The tea dye, the antique linen. It'd be kind of like going in and tinting a photograph with some additional tone. There's purple on my wand here. Let me see if I can get that out. There's a little bit of green here. I don't know. Maybe I'll go for some sort of fusion. So that's the way I make my decisions. If I'm too lazy to clean something, it'll just be that color, you know. Alright, let me see if I can get more of this green out of here. I don't feel like cleaning off, I don't know, 12 different tips and, you know, on a daily basis, so that's how I get a lot of mixtures, a lot of different colors, is because there's a lot of residual tone from me not cleaning everything out perfectly. Alright, let's take a look at this. This is an antique linen. It's a very, very pale version of, kind of a warm brown, I guess. Tan, whatever. Just kind of that warm tinge, okay? Actually, that looks pretty good, I think. It kind of gives a little bit more depth to that color scheme. I don't know if you can see it over here. It's very subtle. I haven't done any over here. Okay. And it's so light that, I don't know, I get the benefit of having it on there without making, again, a huge commitment to that hue, okay? It just makes the gray actually looked a little bit cool, on the cool side. I don't know, might have had some blue in it or something before, but it's kind of a silvery, but this is definitely going in and influencing the temperature range quite a bit. You know, for me, it's more of a warm gray now. Okay. Let's go with the tea dye and see what that looks like, okay? If I like it, then I typically add a little bit more. Always test. See if I like something. If I like it, then you can keep adding more, okay? But every time you switch to a new color, it doesn't have to be a huge commitment to that color. Test it out, see if you like it. If you like it, go in and add more. Adding it down in the darker areas like that to kind of warm up those shadows, and also to kind of gradually move this in. It'll show up in the very light areas more distinctly because there isn't anything on there already, like, you know, gray and black ink in this case. But it also gives you a chance to kind of see it develop. Okay, there we go there. Distressings have that kind of aged look to them, and kind of definitely have a, you know, a very good definitive kind of niche within the dye-based ink world. Okay. Okay, kind of streak it in just like you were streaking in some of that black before. Okay. Right. Kind of, I don't know, this kind of gives it an antiqued look. Not that it has to have that kind of antique look, but kind of, this looks like some kind of like historical type of setting, you know, or situation like that with the figure here. Oh yeah, I forgot about the horse. Let's add some of that tone onto the horse as well. Okay. So something like that. Alright, let's have some fun with the pigment ink. I think we're done. With the toning part, that's enough for me, I think. I say that, but you never know. Alright, let's see here. I think I'll start off with the beams. Alright, I was going to do some other types of, you know, lightning of some of the clouds, but we'll just go with the beams right now. Okay, we have a strong beam coming across this way. I can have the beams coming from behind the horse as well as in front. Maybe some will go in front and like some will go in back. I'm not quite sure. But let's take a look here. Alright, I have my cotton swabs. Looks like they've already been used. This is the one that I used earlier. Well, it's set for me to go then, because they're already kind of smashed down, which is nice. Alright, let's see here. Let's kind of follow the beams on the image, okay, and carry that out that way. This will look kind of weird a lot of times until you kind of add them in different areas, you know. It's kind of like a lighting scheme technique here. Alright, this is the Colorbox Frost White Pigment Ink. Try to show you that a little reversed. I think they changed the case, you know, since then. I think they look different, or at least the typography or something like that. I think I saw it somewhere. But it should be the same. I say should because sometimes they come out with I don't know, some version of you know, their former products and call it something else. Or call it the same, but it is something else. You know, it's a chalk pad or something like that, and this one's the regular pad. Alright, I need 2 pieces of paper. I need both sides of the ray stamp, or the ray, not, I don't know, the pigment ink ray, okay? Go like this, kind of just place that down next to that ray stamp, kind of in the direction that it's kind of shining in. Alright, this white is really quite dry. Let me go with the re-inked one that I have. I don't have that one that's just right. One's just super dry and one's super, super juicy. At least as far as my color box one goes. But we want to taper it. We want more ink near our light source, and then as we go away from it, what we're doing is we're kind of tapping somewhat lightly so that less ink is applied, but I'm still tapping or applying this on with a, you know, quite a dry tip. Okay, now I re-inked just now, so there's a lot more on it. Okay, but lighter touch out here, so it kind of tapers off. Now when this dries, pigment ink dries on something like this, it's going to dry much darker. So you can re-layer some on there and just keep building it up, or you can just have kind of the drier version. Okay, there's one beam coming out that way. See that like that? Okay, let's do it again. Right here, see that beam right there? Let's do that one. Okay. A lot of ink in the lighter areas, okay? And then as I tap that in, it becomes, you know, drier and drier on here, and then I can move into the darker areas because the drier this is, and it doesn't apply as much ink because there isn't as much ink on there. So every time you kind of, it's the direct opposite of if you're applying ink, you know, dark ink over a lighter area. You know, I start in the darker areas, and then work in my lighter areas, and this one, it's the opposite. I'm starting in my lighter areas and working in my darker areas, because as this becomes dry, it becomes lighter, not as much ink is applied, okay? So if you want a beam like that to kind of taper off, you put more of your ink, you know, right when you ink it up, in that lighter area like that. As you move out, kind of use lighter touch. Alright, so there we have that. You can kind of see the idea here. Alright, now here's something that I'm going to do. I want to have like one of these beams kind of going in front of this character, or I can have these beams going in back of, right down here. Let's just do that right now, so you can see what I'm talking about easier. Okay, so let's go down this way, and about like so. Right, now I don't want too much down here because I want this beam to taper off because the sea is kind of darker anyway. So I wouldn't have too much light shining on it, you know, in a dark area of it. So let's not apply too much of this. Let's have it kind of taper off to nothing before it gets to that water. Otherwise I'd have to do kind of some kind of lighting in the water where it's shining into it. Okay. See that? kind of carries that beam down this way and in back of that horse. Alright, now let's see something here. I can't get into that little arm area or something like that with my stylus tools. It's too narrow, it's too detailed of an area, so I'm just going to go into this, coloring its arm a little bit, getting some tone onto it. Okay, this is like a beige-ish color. Okay. Camel, that's a little bit too dark. Maybe I can hit the shadows on the arm. A little bit on the face. Go back to the lighter one after that, kind of blend that in a little bit. Alright, now here's what I'm going to do on the robe too. I'm going to use some shading in there. Let's go with the, I tell you what, let's go with a little bit of a violet tinge. I think that would go well in this kind of color scheme. I know that's per pink. Let's test that one, okay? Let's try that. I'm going to hit my shadows a touch. The drapery of the image. Kind of vary it a little bit. Don't just see the whole thing and just color it in like that. Have a little bit of variation in there so you have some light and dark within those shadows there. Okay, and how about the wings? Do we want to do anything with the wings, maybe? Hit it with a little shading. Let me try some gray. Too gray, too dark. Yeah, that would be good. Some areas on this wing where the wing's in shadow. Some areas on the horse, I can kind of get into these areas. It's just a little bit darker. So, I get the benefit of some shading without having to make a big commitment to that tone, that value. Alright, now I want that figure to be kind of angelic, so I am going to put it in a kind of field of light, glowing light with this pigment ink, but I kind of want to flesh it in a little bit more to give it mass and opacity and value. I don't want it to look all, like see-through, okay? Alright, so we have those rays coming down. We have this ray right here that we can do. Why don't we do this? Let's see. Let's have that ray coming down right over the top of this image, so it's kind of coming in front of the image here. Or, not image, but subject, okay? Kind of aim that like so. It's kind of tapered, okay? That light beam. Let's see. Something like that. Okay. Going right over my imagery. We have this really dark area of the horse, or darker areas of the horse, okay? So I'm going to be careful not to tone everything out there. And we'll kind of taper it off. I'm kind of applying less ink down here as it gets farther away from the light source. Okay, there we have it. See that kind of tapering right here, but look at that light beam coming down like that, and it's kind of hitting this illuminated area. Boy, that looks pretty neat, I think. In terms of, I don't know, this technique, it can really be quite effective. Okay, let's see. Right there. This area down here is really dark, so let's kind of taper it off before it gets down there. Do you know what I mean by that? See, if I had light going all the way down here, I'd have to have this area of the water, which is, you know, should be reflective. I would have to have that lighter. Okay, but I've already kind of added in that tone in that area, so I'm not really able to do that. Not without a ton of work. You know, I'd have to add so much pigment ink in there to kind of keep the forms, you know, somewhat natural looking. And the forms being the water's surface, okay? I don't want to have to lighten up that whole area that I just toned out. I'm kind of adding some down and it's kind of blobbing, so I'm taking my dry one and flipping it around and kind of blending it out, okay? Alright, let's see what that one looks like. Okay. See, it's kind of transparent, okay? Trying to think if I want more here or something like that. I think that looks okay as is. So let's do something. Let's go in. Alright, we have this light coming out from this area right here. Looks pretty dramatic with the beams, but let's add a little bit more lighting into the scene, okay? So, around that area where it's coming out, let's illuminate it a touch, okay? With some additional pigment ink, white pigment ink. This is like one of those few times and situations where you can add light back into dark. Okay, it's going with a little bit more of a, you know, translucent, translucent opacity. Okay, in these areas, it's not really opaque. It's translucent. You can see through it, you know, but it can overlay over darker areas like that. So. Good thing we have pigment inks at our disposal. Okay, kind of adding some of that around here, illuminating that a little bit more. It's like if that's where the light is coming from, then let's put some light back into it. Alright, now on the figure, let's put a little bit of illumination on, you know, the side of the figure, kind of facing some of that light, okay? So, this Pegasus, I could put a little bit of light on the wing, like that. It's capturing some of that light, maybe on its mane a little bit, like so, on the angel's wing. I don't know if that's an angel. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I was thinking. I didn't even check. I was thinking you have an angel with wings riding on a Pegasus, but I guess that's not. It's just Pegasus, you know, that has the wings here. Nevertheless, it is a kind of a dramatic figure, a magnificent figure, subject riding the horse, Pegasus, so we'll make it kind of illuminated and dramatic. Okay, here's what I'm doing. I'm adding some of this pigment ink on my clouds so that the clouds are reflecting some of that lighting back at the light source. So we have light source and reflected light right on top of these clouds, okay? Okay, see those clouds right in there, kind of giving it that softer look in there, which is contrasting against a nice crisp image, okay? And if you kind of lighten up a little bit of an area next to something that's dark, by contrast, the darker looks darker, the lighter looks lighter. Okay, but we also have, when you add this pigment ink in there, it kind of makes things softer, and that's really a nice textural contrast against crisp, okay? But clouds, I love to make these clouds nice and billowy and soft, and I like to make them look like what they are, and that's, you know, suspended vapor, so kind of making them soft like that, and putting this kind of this aura of reflective, I don't know, whatever, moisture, I guess, in the sky is really kind of that fun little touch that can really make a nice textural statement in a given scene. Okay, how does that look? Alright, let's add some of this down here in the water. Okay, we have these crashing waves, creating this kind of sea foam, you know, right along the, those cresting waves. Puts a lot of, kind of sea spray, sea mist into the air. I'm putting it where kind of the light is illuminating it. Okay, a little bit more, so we have that beam coming down, so I'm adding a little bit more of this mist, because you really wouldn't be able to see the mist, you know, without light hitting it, you know, for it to reflect off of. Okay, so I'll add a little bit more down here, like about like so. Don't splatter, you know, slather the whole thing, kind of oscillate it a little bit here, here, okay. Otherwise we can add too much. If you do add too much and it doesn't look right, just take your finger or take a Kleenex or paper towel and just buff it right out. It'll come out if you're using the, especially if you're using the Colorbox one. Certain ones might be a little bit more, well, kind of permanent and fast drying. I don't know if it's permanent, but definitely fast drying. Alright, here's some Hero Arts. This one's a little bit more, but not quite opaque. Okay, so I'm going to add it in here, and that'll give me an even brighter, lighter, well, not lighter, brighter, but lighter application. Okay, and let's add a little bit more on a couple of these rays down here, okay? Let's go like that. Okay, a little bit stronger white coming down here, a little bit of a stronger beam. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to do it on a couple of these other beams. Now what I do is sometimes I taper it a little bit, so I won't put this down here, and I'll just make one side of the beam a little bit stronger, okay? And sometimes I think a varied strength, you know, in terms of a beam, looks really good, just as I like varied shadows, you know, some areas that aren't quite as dark as others. Yes, and the opposite might be true in terms of like a light beam. Some areas of the beam I might like a little bit lighter than other areas, okay, so we can have a little bit of variation here. Okay, something like that. See that right there? It isn't so uniform, and I think that looks pretty good in terms of creating that variation. Okay. There's that one goes. I'm going to lighten up a little bit of the shoulder of the figure, okay? So it looks like light is hitting it and kind of, you know, wrapping around it a little bit. See, like that. Right there. It looks like light is kind of hitting it, right? Okay, let's vary this beam a little bit. That beam was pretty subtle, which I kind of want, but maybe not that subtle. Okay, like that. I don't know, I think it's looking a little bit more interesting the more you kind of add on this beam right here. Okay, let's do it. Just trying to decide if I wanted to vary it, because this beam isn't supposed to be very light, but why don't we lighten it kind of we're at the source, and then we'll do a quick tapering off right around here. Like so. I think I want one over here. Okay, I don't want this kind of ends abruptly. Okay. Let's just create another one right here. Let's do it very lightly. Something like that. And that That doesn't look good. Let me see. This is my tone removing device, my finger, okay? Let's go like that. That looks better. It's just a very subtle application of it. Okay. If you like it, just keep adding more in a given area. Okay, let me see. Sometimes when you start building up, some of this pigment ink on your given objects or areas, if you kind of keep tapping there, what you'll find is sometimes if this ink starts to set up, okay, which it does, sometimes it's almost like you're removing the ink, when you think when you want to be applying it, just because that ink is very forgiving. So the very fact that I can just dab some of it off to my finger before it dries, you can do the same thing after it dries, okay, and it'll come right off. Alright, so we have our nice dramatic looking Pegasus rising. Okay, something like that. And that nice illumination coming from up there. Let's see. There's a couple little areas that I could stand to use a little bit more tone. Go like so. Alright. Let's grab our trusty Uniball Signo pen and let's add some final touches, okay? We have a lot of light streaming down from this area, and let's add some kind of sharper touches with this pen here. Okay, I'm going to add some little dots coming down here, like, oh, I don't know. They're almost like living little things. Could be a flare, light flares. Okay. And I can kind of add some dots coming from that direction. Put it in front of the object in some areas, okay. You can highlight some of these clouds. On the side of the cloud, facing the light, I'll put a few little dots. That might look like, they're capturing and reflecting some of that light source. Same thing down here on these tops of these clouds. Maybe a little bit closer to the light. I have a little more highlights, and in the darker areas maybe less. Might be a couple little dots down there, something like that. Okay. Beams of light. Okay, in the water, this is really fun down here, especially in those areas that are somewhat illuminated, going back in, creating this kind of sharp little highlights. Kind of going in the with the design, the spirit of the design is kind of you know, on a horizontal like that. We have these cresting waves down here, again splashing some of that water. It's kind of in the design itself too, so we're just going in and reiterating the same type of thing with some additional texture. Okay. The horizon here. This tail right here, look at all these textures in the tail. Okay, let's bring some of that in. Okay. Something like that, where it's capturing, you know, more of that light. See on this wing right here, getting rid of that outline and just putting a white kind of reflective type of touch onto there. So, we have these waving kind of hair, you know. Might make it a little bit more majestic to put, you know, a lot of reflective highlights on that hair like that. Same thing on the figure riding. So that kind of, we've lit certain areas of the figure, horse. Alright, I'm going to do these little solar flare types of things. I'm going to put some larger little balls of light, okay? What I'm looking for is I want to make it look like they're kind of coming towards me, okay? So do like small, slightly smaller ones there, and larger ones here and there. Kind of like they're emanating, okay? And as they kind of move towards you, they're bigger, but kind of more spread out. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with these in a minute. Okay. What's that? Oh, I think it's time for a new Q-tip here. Kind of fray it a little bit, okay? Here we go. It's too tight as is. I want it soft for a soft application. Kind of unraveling it a bit. Okay, smashing the tip down a little bit. Getting the right consistency, so it's kind of about feel. Okay, now this is kind of soft and unwound. Alright, I'm going to get some of my pigment ink. Okay, just lightly dab it into that. Okay. This is almost becoming too frayed now. Alright. But let's see if I can kind of get it back together. I'll smash it down like this, okay? Smashing it down is kind of, it's taking off a lot of the ink and giving me a kind of a more consistent tip here to apply this ink with, okay? So it serves two purposes. And you want, you know, semi-dry amount of ink on here. Now watch what I'm going to do here. In some of these larger little balls that I did, you see it, little textures like that. What we'll do is we'll make those little kind of spheres of light in the scene, which is kind of giving the scene an additional layer of, I guess it's imagery. They're just dots, but they're kind of these glowing little dots, and it kind of creates a different kind of plane within the scene. It's saying that there, you know, there's this another dimension, you know, a 3-dimension is here, and that's where these little glowing little spheres exist. Okay, now they're going back in the distance too, so maybe some are in front of and some are behind, so it kind of envelops this character in these little kind of magical glowing lights, you know. Or we can just see them as like a lens flare type of thing, you know, if you point a camera at the, you know, at the sun or in the direction of it, like especially around like sunset or something like that, when we're very aware of those types of things in the air. Okay. See now what that did? It's like these little glowing things. It's like, I don't know, they look like little figures to me almost. They're like little dancing little balls of light. Okay, let's see. I think it can stand to use some more. I think that looked pretty good. Put a few more like in front of, okay, the character. Is there too much, such thing as too much of these? Maybe. But there's a big kind of a tolerance, okay? I'd say maybe 1,000 are too many, but, you know, anywhere between, whatever, 20 and 100, you know, is fine. Okay. There. See, it's like the figure is enveloped in this kind of almost like a magical light, like that. And if any of them stand out too much, actually you don't need to worry about that too much, because when you apply this pigment ink over the top of, you know, a background like this, it dries darker. So all these little glowing little spheres are going to dry darker than how they look right now at the moment. So I don't know, I would kind of just let it be and then see if they are indeed too light or whatnot. And even after they're dry, you can kind of just dab it out and it'll remove some of that ink because it's kind of sitting on the surface before you do any like spray sealing of the forms. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look here and see what this looks like. It looks fairly dimensional, and I think that this scene, you know, it's a pretty minimal use of tone, but I think as far as color goes, I think it looks okay. You know, maybe it looks, you know, instead of saying it's minimal, we'll just call it, it's sophisticated. Alright? But anyways, that's a really fun scene to do, and because of it being minimal, I mean, this scene came around fairly quickly. I'm adding a lot of little details in here. We did kind of a two-tone raise in here with a couple different types of ink. Remains to be seen how kind of dark it gets, you know, in terms of these beams. I don't know, maybe having the two tones on there, maybe what we see is what we'll get, but it could, you know, there's a chance that it dries out darker than that. But anyways, what a fun scene to do, and this type of touch with the pigment inks can really add a nice little twist to, I don't know, compositions that don't employ that technique. Alright, I think it looks more dramatic and more dimensional as well, so it's always fun to go back in and be able to add kind of light into dark like that. It's a formidable possibility, you know, when it comes to stamping like that. Because when we're working with inks, typically, you just have to keep going darker and darker. You can't put a light blue dye-based ink over a dark blue one and have it look light again, so something like pigment ink is one of those opportunities to go in there, and what a textural difference it makes. Okay, it really adds that element of softness, and especially when it comes to light, it's that soft glowing light that becomes much more pleasant to the eye. That's why those light bulbs are out there called soft white. Okay, we don't, you know, to our eye it's just a nice pleasant look looking at soft light. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed the scene, and I don't know, I'm just looking at it trying to decide if I want anything more on there. I think we need one more dot in this area. Okay, something like that. I don't know, it's missing some kind of light over here, I think. Let's see here. Alright, now that really needs to set up and dry, but let's see if I can kind of get a little ink on there without that just coming off immediately. I'll try dabbing really lightly. Not too bad. That's the Signo for you, the Signo, Uniball Signo. Some of my cheaper ones, that ink just kind of comes right off, it's so thin. Alright, there we go. I think. Let's see. Alright, that's better. I just wanted that to kind of travel down in these areas, and having that kind of hovering little thing in there kind of brings a little bit of visual interest to that scene in that area. Oh, let me see something here too. I worked on it this far. Let's add a little bit of, it's a VersaFine. Let's add a little bit of foreground in here. In the form of maybe some beach grass or something. And I like that little thing kind of peering out from that little ball I'm talking about, that sphere of light. Okay, something like that goes with that really nicely. Okay. Some beach grass. Okay. All right, now that's done, I think. If it's not, I'll add it later, and it'll be in the photograph on Flickr. All right, Pegasus. Pegasus rising? Something? Descending from the heavens? I don't know. But bathed in light, for sure. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the scene. Nice and dramatic, and oh, so much fun. All right, thanks for watching.